Hello, everybody. Welcome to the LymphaPress Lymphedema Patient Roundtable, the October Roundtable. We're so excited all of you are here with us tonight, and we so appreciate you spending your Tuesday evening with us. We have a lovely hour ahead of conversation and community. And while we're getting started, if you want to pop into the chat and just let us know who you are and where you're coming from, we'd love to see that and say hello. And in the meantime, I'm going to introduce our lovely panel tonight. So we have Kelly Bell, our veteran fighting lymphedema, our incredible advocate for the community. If you know or want to know anything about central lymphatics, he is your guy. We like to say he's like an honorary MD at this point with all the research he does. We have Catherine Rosenberg. She is a cancer survivor, lymphedema patient, advocate, and math teacher. And she's coming from her beautiful virtual beach right now. Wish we could all be there. We have Angela Jones, our lipolymphedema patient, certified. Oh, no, that's Amanda. I'm reading my notes. Lipolymphedema patient and health coach. We love that she's here tonight in her pretty red shirt. And we've got Betty Westbrook, our CLT. She's going to be fielding our medical themed questions tonight. So we like to say we do not give medical advice, but if you have any questions, if we can answer generally, Betty is going to be our go-to gal for that. And I am Alexa Ercolano. I am a lymphedema patient and I work for LymphaPress. And we're so excited to see everybody popping in. Rich Vogel, we've got Fenton from Trenton. We actually met him recently at the Boston Lymphatic Patient Symposium, which Kelly and I will talk about later. We've got Sue Dunn from Bear, Delaware. A lot of rhyming names here. Tina Kunkel, Jamie from South Carolina, Barbara, Robin. Welcome, everybody. We are so psyched you're here. So we're just going to pop in, keep coming in saying hi, and we're just going to get started. If you have any questions, please pop them in the Q&A box, and we'll try and get to them throughout the evening. And let's just get to it, I guess. Kelly, you want to start telling us a little bit about the patient symposium, because you actually spoke at the event. You gave a very moving speech.
I can't say this enough. If you have the opportunity to come to one of these events, I met Fenton there for the first time, and so, but not just him. I talked to a lady who she's in her 50s. She had bladder cancer and this mechanical bladder thing, but she had lymphedema in her leg, and she's coming up to me and she's telling me, and her mother's right there. They literally Googled something about lymphedema and found this event. They showed up, and like she's telling me in tears, she spent her entire life thinking she was the only one. And so it's really powerful to sit in a room and talk to people who know exactly what you're going through, what your struggles have been. Like if you've never been supported, to have that support right there in front of you to like be able to share that. So the first thing I would say is if you ever have an event like that coming near you, I highly want to encourage you to try to get there. And then for me, I met Babs, who is a lymphedema. So let me get this. She's a yoga instructor, an occupational therapist, and certified lymphedema therapist. And she does this thing with lymphatic yoga. And so everybody was raving about it. I've talked to her a few times. It's pretty unique. And as you guys hear me talk about, is like keep moving. Well, and like I'm not when you don't have to go running, you have to do these things, but she has programs where she teaches you how to keep moving with yoga, and it's like specifically focused on moving lymphatics and using yoga to do that. Something that she's created, and I just thought I'd share that with you guys if you guys are like ever wanting to find, because for me, when I try to do yoga, certain positions cause me to get fluid in places, and so she actually has a grasp on all that. So and then like that's one thing about these events. You just run into people in different like every presenter could teach you something you've never heard, and I'm try to be pretty out there with information, but every time I go out, I either learn something from a presenter or even better yet, patients who go like, oh, well. So
Yeah, that was the special thing about this event too, is that it was geared to patients. And for a lot of people there, it was their first time meeting other patients in person or seeing the different, vendors that have garments or pumps or things like that. So it was a really neat event to kind of make it accessible, make this information and community accessible to people, which was lovely. And Kimberly Blumeyer says in the chat, yoga is best for her body too. And that makes a lot of sense. It's very gentle movement, which is always helpful. Well, we had a lot of events happen recently. I don't know if anyone's in the Philadelphia area, but there was the Learn fundraising walk in the Philadelphia Zoo. I don't think any of us were there, but we were there in spirit. But getting to events are great. And I don't know if anybody on the panel has any resources where people can find when these sort of events pop up. I know Facebook is always a helpful tool to find support groups and events, but any of you guys know? I know, Betty, I think there's one coming up next weekend that you're involved with.
Yeah, sorry, I was just trying to respond to someone real quick in the chat without being like, yes. So I want to backtrack to what you just said on events, because I was just thinking, maybe this is something I can do on like my podcast page or something, but I was like, I wish we had like a social event, like a place to go to that collects these, because I've kind of wondered myself, like, how do all the people find out about it without it just being in that one little circle, that one network or like that one area. So that's kind of interesting that you guys, I was literally just thinking about that probably within the last week, about trying to find a hub so people can go in and search locations. And I feel like this is Kelly's thinking face also. So we might, are you thinking?
No, I'm thinking like, but we need to make it Google searchable too, because the fact that she found it searching for lymphedema and it popped up in her area, that's important, because I mean, I'm with you. Like most of this stuff, we actually are part of the community. And when we push, like we're always sharing information that we share amongst ourselves, but we're missing people who like are not part of this group yet, right?
Yeah.
Who're not part of the roundtable, who don't know.
Yeah.
And so any ideas from any of the audience or anybody want to say, hey, I could help with that.
Yeah. Anybody
technologically
that's
a good idea.
Help us build out a algorithm, or I don't know, something. So I will be presenting in Atlanta, Georgia on October 22nd. The event is the Lighthouse Lymphedema Network's conference. And so it is kind of geared toward pediatrics, which is pretty cool, because I feel like recently, obviously you guys know I'm passionate about pediatrics and lymphedema and that whole population of kiddos and their parents. But I feel like lately, probably in the last year or so, there's been a little bit of shift in interest in pediatrics, as well as like central lymphatics. And it's cool because at this conference, a representative from Children's Hospital of Philadelphia will be there to talk about central lymphatics in children. So they're kind of bringing the two topics together. I'm going to read off just here the topics that the presenters are going to cover. I don't have the schedule or anything, but if any of these things pop out to you, so imaging and intervention for lymphatic flow disorders in children. And then I'm presenting on treatment for children. And there's someone presenting on near infrared fluorescence, and that's just general imaging. That's not just for pediatrics. The importance of all aspects of CDT and a mentally healthy me. So mental health is a big thing. And we know that in October, we have like Mental Health Awareness Day. And so we are really seeing the effects of mental health in the whole lifespan, but I'm starting to see it. I'm starting to be very aware of it in our pediatrics, and how this disease process and the daily care that kids have to pay attention to, cuts, activities, swelling, all these things are really digging in and like having an effect on their mental health. So I find that this is a really interesting topic too. And then also Shelley will be presenting on gadgets and gizmos for lymphedema treatment. And there's a little bit of a exhibitors booth, exhibitors hall, so you can come in and see some products, and some of these gadgets and gizmos that Shelly will be talking about will be there for people to touch and see and demo a little bit. So I think that's pretty cool. And also to mention that this conference is online and in person. So if you are not able to plan a trip to Atlanta, Georgia between now and the 22nd, you can register online. I think it's a pretty affordable registration, like $50 or something. And I know that I'm excited because I'm bringing one of our camp families, the Mustmans, to come and talk about their experience as families that deal with lymphedema. And then we'll also have a CLT there who is a lipolymphedema patient herself. She has a daughter with lymphedema, and she's a CLT who has volunteered at Camp Watch Me the last 2 years. So hopefully she'll be able to share a lot of information on her perspective as a parent, a patient, and a therapist. Pretty cool.
Awesome.
And I'm going to share the link in the chat.
Perfect.
Sorry, I had it all here, but I have the link on my phone. I need to copy and paste it over real quick.
And we did have a question, and I feel like Kelly might want to jump in on this one as well. Kimberly Blumeyer asked, what is central lymphatics?
Okay, this is easier shown than explained. It's actually the simplest lymphatic system, but it's the most important when you think about it, because all your lymphatics from your legs come into basically what's called your lumbar lymphatics. That's where the central lymphatics start. It starts like at the crease of your legs and comes up. Now you understand these run right along the top of your spine. And then it comes up to what's called like this area where they all come together. So let's just start the sternocoli. And it's kind of like the junction point for like your lymphatics in your the small intestines and intestines, called your mesenterics, your liver, and actually your kidneys actually drain there too. So that area is really important. And then it comes up your thoracic duct, and believe it or not, even your thoracic duct has like drainage from your esophagus and your pulmonary, your lungs, and then your heart, and then comes up and it drains all into here. So it's actually, like I tell you, it's the lifeline of your organs. It keeps them alive. So basically that's it. It doesn't have like the manipulation aspect of like superficial lymphatics, like moving things around. It either goes or it doesn't. And if it doesn't go, it can reflux down, and it can reflux way down. Some of this will be presented at the conference, I'm sure, if Children's Hospital of Philadelphia is doing it, because that's one of the things they show. So that's central lymphatics.
That's so interesting, because I think those of us in the community, we're so used to thinking of lymphatics in terms of our limbs pretty much, because that's what we generally see as affected by lymphedema, but lymphedema can actually affect more than just your limbs. So thank you for explaining that.
No problem.
We have a ton of questions coming in through the chat. Oh, sorry, what?
This one's probably got something to say about them.
Oh, Catherine. Oh, yeah. Sorry, Catherine. I'm so sorry. Didn't see ya. Please go ahead.
So that's okay. That's okay. So just keep in mind that even if you have peripheral, like your arms or your legs being swollen, that may or may not just be your arm or your leg being swollen. It could actually be a central lymphatic issue. I'm actually speaking from personal experience, because I actually did have a central lymphatic issue that nobody knew about. And they actually believe it happened back in 2013. So, and they were always treating me peripherally. But now that they've treated me centrally, I've actually had drastic improvements across the board.
Thank you for, Kelly, it sounded like you were
Well,
talking.
just to give you a number on how many people probably have central lymphatic issues and you don't know, like there was an estimate at NIH's recent webinar where like people who are treated from cancers for like, genital cancers, bladder cancers, cervical cancers, like pulmonary cancer. When you take those numbers and that percentage down, and let's say you cut it at 30%, that's 400,000 patients a year who will come into the lymphatic community who develop lymphedema from those treatments. Mm-hmm. And most of them will be treated peripherally, when actually the issue is actually potentially a central lymphatic damage. Because that's where they're radiated and that's where they're cut.
Yeah, that makes sense though. Tina asked, actually, anyone have their abdominal affected? So that seems like that would also be, yeah. I know a few of us on the panel.
Central lymphatics is a big one for that.
Yeah. Kimberly in the chat does too. Yep. There's a whole bunch of us. Yeah, it's very common. And that's one of the things, you know, with like pumps, for example, too, and having pumps that can treat that whole area, like the LymphaPants garment. If you're a LymphaPress user or interested, we do have garments that treat the abdominal back area, the trunk, the legs, everything, because it is all connected. It is all connected like that. Well, we've got a question in the chat. I see Betty is interested in answering this one. Linda Reese wants to know, how can she measure the effectiveness of the LymphaPress?
Yeah, so I like to share real life stories when I can as a therapist. And just today, I actually had a patient in the clinic who has a pump. She knows not how to use it. She doesn't know what brand it is, and said that after her DVTs and some of her chronic swelling, that a rep just came in and set her up with it. And I know it's not a LymphaPress pump just by the way she was handled. And so I went through and I measured her, and we talked about the effects of it. And she was down 1.5 centimeters at her most affected area after a 20-minute treatment earlier today. And so that is one way to be able to see with a circumferential difference. But it also comes into play to consider changes in skin texture. So is your skin feel softer, not just because the fluid is moved, but if you have harder fibrotic tissue, did the LymphaPress pump help you to get rid of some of that fluid and some of the fibrotic, break up some of that tissue? You often have a sensation of needing to urinate within an hour, sometimes while you're in your session, depending on how much flow you're having. And then over a period of time, you'll see just a decrease in circumference. And I often think mobility is a key. Like, you can see difference in mobility, range of motion, either if it's your knee or your elbow, it doesn't feel as tight. You can move it a little bit more. And that's just one example, literally from earlier today in the clinic, that she had improved results after me working, using my LymphaPress pump that I have on her, and kind of showing her how to use it. Because her other one, she said, caused her pain, and it shouldn't be painful when you use it. And she didn't know how to set the pressure. And so you should always know how to like manage your pressure and all those things. So that's why I know it wasn't a LymphaPress pump. She would know how to do that if LymphaPress had set her up.
I'm so glad you mentioned beyond just the circumference changes. It is so, I mean, lymphedema and treating lymphedema, even and living with it, is this very holistic full body thing. It's not just one way to measure it. There's not just one way to treat it. Skin changes and just the weight of your limb, how that feels, are such good indicators too. And I'm a big fan of tracking my measurements and stuff. So I keep like a little bullet journal sometimes where I'll track, you know, after I use my pump or whatever, just so I can see the change and know that, okay, this is what's working. This is how I felt. This is what could have triggered that. So there's a number of ways you can measure the effectiveness in a way that's helpful to you and translates with you. So thanks, Betty, for explaining that, and so exciting about your patient. We love to hear that.
I told her, I said, I want you to tell me, bring back the pump. Let me see what it is. And then I'm going to call Bo. He's the rep here in the area. And I was like, I'm going to get you hooked up with the real pump.
And if you're watching and you want to get hooked up with the LymphaPress, please send us an email at marketing@lymphapress.com, and we will see what we can do. But yeah, someone in the chat said that they always have to urinate after treatment, so it's working. Yes, so we all on the panel know when you got to pee afterwards, that is a good sign. All right, so let's see, lots more questions. We have a question from an anonymous attendee that was told swimming helps with lymphedema, but they don't want to be in a pool full of chlorine. Should they try a dry sauna instead? Now, what's the take on saunas? Because I know that heat can be a little bit, you know, not so kind to swelling. I'm
going to just say it's not the same as swimming.
Mm-hmm.
So blanket statement on that, you can't substitute the effects of a pool with the sauna. I would say the dry sauna is more for detoxing and letting of that type of fluid, sweating that way, which is healthy. And I'll let you guys, the patients, if you want to speak to heat, because I think heat sometimes affects people differently. Some people can
Absolutely.
tolerate it, some people cannot. So I'm not going to say my piece on that. I will just, as a CLT, say swimming doesn't, cannot be substituted with a sauna. And if you're worried about a chlorine pool, you can potentially try a saltwater pool, or depending on where you live, I'm hesitant to offer like open water because, you know, germs and snakes and stuff. And I'm thinking of like, I'm from the country, so like you don't want to go hop in a pond. It seems not like a great option either. But I'm thinking like a saltwater pool or the ocean. I've heard patients have great responses after being in the ocean, and the buoyancy of it and stuff. So I'll let you guys talk about the heat, but that's my piece on the pool and the sauna.
Yeah, you're talking two different things. Water, the reason the pools and the water works is the pressure when you actually change the outside pressure. So it actually affects the inside pressures of the body, and it allows more to flow. Hopefully it doesn't work on everybody, but ironically it does work on a large majority. Heat is a cautionary thing. Normally, like people were told to stay away from heat. I use it, believe it or not, to get my heart rate up before I pump without creating lymph, because yeah, that's me doing Kelly. So, but like, yeah, that's heat. It's up to you. Like that is, everybody can manipulate it or gets different effects from that. But those are two different things, the sauna and the water. So it was hard to answer.
How about you, Angela? Because you live in some hot places. Oh, you're muted.
Okay, I live in a sauna, but I actually have a sauna, and I have infrared sauna. I love it, but it doesn't love me. And for a time, I was getting in it like every other day because it feels so good. I set it on like 150 degrees, and it felt so good. But it did irritate both the lipedema and the lymphedema. So I had to leave it alone.
Have you ever tried pumping afterwards? Just a curiosity thing.
No, I haven't tried that, but that would be interesting.
Yeah, that is something that you have, for me, I have to incorporate in. It's not like I go jump into a hot sauna or hot tub.
I may try that. I may try it.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah. Speaking about pumping again, we had a comment in the chat. Juanita Rankin says pumping is very painful for her, and she was told to continue to use it despite that pain. It should not be painful to you. As Tina just said to you in the chat, to check with the people you're working with. Definitely, we all, I think, can agree, talk to your doctor or therapist, because it should not be painful like that. And if it's a lymphopress, you can change the pressure settings if it's an optimal plus pump. So please do check with your therapist, because you should not be in pain like that. We got another comment from Irene, who I saw commented on our Facebook page earlier too, about she just got her lymphopress last week. And she said on Facebook how it was so easy for her to use. And in chat, she told us that she hasn't used a pump in years and she can feel the difference already. Just made up a form that includes, she made up a form that includes time, pressure, and measurements so she can keep track, which is great. We love to hear that. So awesome. Lots of good discussion going on in the chat right now. Is there anybody on the panel, maybe has anything going on too that you'd like to bring up? I know that Monday, Betty mentioned this briefly, it was World Mental Health Day, which is always a huge key part of living with a chronic condition like lymphedema or lipedema. Mental health is just as important as physical health. So does anybody have any insights on that perhaps, or advice or challenges lately that they've been going through that they could perhaps share with attendees? Not to put anyone on the spot.
I will share from a therapist perspective. One of the reasons why I'm so pumped about this presentation at the Lymphedema Lighthouse Networks conference is because I've seen the effects of mental health in our patients. And often you associate that with the effects of breast cancer, because we know that in the US, breast cancer is the #1 cause for lymphedema, secondary related lymphedema. But you don't think about those lasting impacts after they're in remission and that daily reminder. But then that special spot in my heart, that's for all the primary lymphedema patients, the pediatric lymphedema patients, the parents, the caregivers, the therapists who are going through that with them. I started the season of Lymphedema podcast off this year super heavy on mental health awareness, because I myself, I had a little bit of a breakdown about a year ago, just with the overwhelming emotional toll of like taking in so much, if that makes sense. And I want to share it, and I always want to take in the stories. Like if someone has a hard day or something, I want to take that in, but I wasn't taking care of myself while doing that. I was just giving, and I turned into an empty cup. And so what I would say is that full spectrum, parent, patient, caregiver, whoever you are on the spectrum, that taking time to assess yourself and say, okay, like, how am I feeling? What's my heart rate like? Where's the tension in my body? How am I responding to this? And taking time for some breath work. I find that breath work is really good for grounding. Getting outside, sunshine's been a good thing for me. And honestly, I actually forgot what your initial question was about mental health awareness, but just giving some tips on like grounding, assessing yourself, and making sure you're not pouring from an empty cup, because no one can help you unless they know that you're hurting or that you're struggling. And when you're the one in your circle that's the strong friend, people don't really remember to check on you. So like if you're the strong dad in the group, or you're the, that encourager all the time, you don't always get that back. And so make sure you have someone in your circle that is checking on you too, that you can go to and be like, I'm really struggling. Even if you don't want to tell everyone, you need to be able to tell at least one person so that they can kind of fill your cup back up and give you a little break.
Love that so much. I love the you can't pour from an empty cup analogy, because it's so true. And our cups can empty pretty fast sometimes. So especially this time of year, gets darker earlier. It's harder to kind of, keep your attitude up. So. Oh, Fenton said, even sunshines have flare-ups time to time. I love that. That's weird.
Yeah, struggling with like the mental health part of this. I think if you're at my presentation, I was very clear about the suicidal point, the point where I was at, like, to the point I had a gun in my hand. I mean, I was that tired, because the lymphatic system, if you think about it, it's the system that can deform us, can cause us severe pain, can starve us. We don't talk about the nutritional aspect of it, and it can kill us, and no one owns it. And so when you're trying to get help and you're struggling, and like these are the paths you go down, you're pulling your family, like whether you want to or not, they're going down that path with you. And so it becomes a daunting task. And again, coming to these roundtables and these meeting people, to me, it's every time I get into a place like the Boston Patient Symposium, or work where Betty's going, the Lighthouse, like, to be surrounded by people, it's really like a release of sometimes, like, because because when you're not in those settings, it's like you're always in defense mode, because people don't understand, and so when you're in that setting, you're not in defense mode. You can relax. You can literally say, "Oh, I feel this," and people go, "Yep, understand." You don't have to go, "I feel this," and go with this long explanation why, bring up the science encyclopedia and anatomy. You can literally say, "Oh, I feel this," I can't do this, and no one questions you. So it's really. So yeah, it's a struggle, but there's a community.
Yeah, the community part is so important, especially living with something like this, because a lot of what we go through is so specific, and people who aren't living with it, even people who are so closely to it, like people like Betty who are CLTs or family members, they'll never truly understand the day-to-day, aspects of it. So leaning on fellow patients and connecting with them. Catherine, I see you got something to say. Let's hear it.
So the one thing is, though, to please make sure that you are taking care of yourself first. Even though that sometimes is a difficult task to do, in order for you to do more things in the future, you need to make sure that you are taking care of yourself, whether it's that you have to take an extra hour before you do something to use your compression pump, to make sure that you put your compression on, to do what is best for you and not push that aside, because if you push that aside, you could be missing out on more things in the future than if you just took that little bit of time now to focus on you, to be able to make sure that you're okay. And sometimes it's like you have to do like a mental check with yourself. Did I do this? Did I do ABC? Okay. Am I doing what I need to do for myself, or what my therapist recommends for me, before I go do XYZ?
Yeah, it's kind of like you can't ignore the check engine light on your car until something bad happens. Tina said that she had a total meltdown. A pint of ice cream numbed everything, and I did so much crying. I live alone. There's no one that says they know about this, and all I was seeing was the image of someone with their leg affected and oozing and having to try to find things. We feel you, Tina. Seriously. I mean, it can be a very isolating thing living with this. And I think attendees and panelists alike have experienced that similar meltdown, I'm sure. Maybe different flavors of ice cream involved, but we've all been there. And it is hard when you don't see positive representations of people living with lymphedema online. And I think that's changing. And I think things like this roundtable and the lovely people here tonight and in the chat, it is changing it, but it can feel lonesome. Angela, do you have anything on the topic? I know you're always a font of wisdom.
No, I think the current buzzword is self-care. I mean, it's everywhere, all over the media, but I think you have to remember to take care of yourself. And I think for me, it's to remember that I cannot be everything to everybody. And that is a difficult thing for me too, because I'm a fixer. So
I'm right there with you.
Yeah, if something happens, I can fix it. And I found lately, since I don't always say, I can't be everything to everybody, I find now that I just kind of cut people out, because I've set myself up to hear problems and to do this and to do that. And then I forget about the fact that, okay, you might need to work on your own problems. So I think we have to remember we cannot be everything to everybody. We have to save some for ourselves.
Mm-hmm. So true. So true.
And yes, I see that, Tina, you commented about the fact that I mentioned about it's okay to have a pity party. It absolutely is. And just go with it. Like, if you need to take that time, that's part of that self-care sometimes. It may not be self-care as in doing things for your physical being, but more so your mental well-being as well.
Mm-hmm. Is something that I learned once in therapy was to look at like emotions or feelings that were kind of, really bothering me, to look at it as a leaf floating by on the surface of a river, and you see it and you acknowledge the feeling, but you don't pick it up, you don't engage with it, you just let it float by. So it's acknowledging that these feelings are happening and that they're there, but you're not going to be, messing around in the muck with it or anything. You're just going to let it float on by, and visualizing that has helped me a lot in some tough times too. And it's sort of that grounding thing that Betty was talking about earlier. Love this in the chat. Fenton's on one tonight. He said, make sure the ice cream is all natural, like Breyers. So true. Oh gosh. Okay. Oh, people are saying a lot of things in the chat now, so we love to see that. Someone said small victories lead to bigger ones. Very true.
So right. It's kind of lengthy. And I don't know if you want to get to the next topic or not, but I interviewed Marshall Lyles back in March. And we talked about grief. So we did a 4-part series on grief, and grief not being in the sense of like death and dying, but grieving through the different aspects of lymphedema. And this is something that he suggested. And he said he also has a chronic illness that he was born with. And so he very closely relates to like a daily struggle of pain, unanswerable medical questions, and he's just like a medical puzzle. And so it's the poem The Guest House by Rumi. I'm probably saying that wrong. Rumi. And this is the thing, and I love it, and it reminds me a lot of kind of what you were just saying about the leaf. Okay, so The Guest House, and I'm not a professional voiceover, so this is nothing fancy. I'm probably going to totally ruin the rhythm. The guest house. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house, empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice. Meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. And so I think about that with like mental health awareness and the struggles that we face, that sometimes our struggles are preparing us for either our next victory or for like our next opportunity to overcome. And so challenges in our health, challenges in our personal life, just the challenges of living. Like, come on, guys, it's hard to just be a human sometimes. So just those challenges, just welcome them and know that they're just a guest. They will eventually leave. You can make them leave sometimes, but also eventually it'll pass.
I really love that. And that's something like the idea of reframing things too, like things that pop up that feel negative or a bad thing. If you reframe the situation and look at it a little differently, that can really help get through. We had someone say, anonymous attendee, at their last lymphedema appointment, there was a lady with both legs and gauze oozing away and was in severe pain. I went out of my way to say a hello to her. I think I made her day. I think you did too. I think recognizing the humanity and like the dignity in people goes a really long way, especially when it looks like they're having a tough day. So that was really kind of you to do that. And for people saying they want a copy of the poem, Betty, if you send that to me, I'll put it out in the replay email when we have the email go out to all the registrants afterwards. So
okay, I just put the title and author in there real quick, and I can look for a link because I just Googled it on Google Images actually when I read it.
That's awesome. Though Rumi has great. He has another quote too that I really like, which is the wound is the place where the light enters you. And that has helped me reframe my lymphedema in like its darkest times. Like, well, what are the positives that come through this wound? It's this community, it's getting to meet all these people and learn resilience and all this stuff. So again, that sort of reframing of things. So that's wonderful. Okay.
That is really good.
Isn't that good?
I was browsing Instagram today, and I haven't been on social media a whole lot lately. And Kirsten, she's 8 furlongs of lymph is her handle on Instagram, and she's really into horses. And she posted about how she actually met one of the Lymphedema Roundtable panelists, pale ginger pear.
Yeah, Kara.
I'm gonna totally get that wrong. Kara, yes. And in her, text, her post, she said, "I'm so glad I have this disease." And I was like, oh, yeah. I mean, when you come to a point where you're like, I'm so thankful for the people in my life and the places that this process has brought me to. And for anyone listening who, if this is their first time to see me, I do not have lymphedema. I'm just crazy passionate about lymphedema and like helping you guys. And I've interviewed Kirsten a couple times about a year ago or 2 years ago. And to see and hear that in her now, not everyone gets there. And that was such a big, I just started crying, actually. I'll be really honest. I started crying at work and I was like, oh, you go, girl. Like, that just made me so happy for her, because it's hard to get to that place. Mm-hmm. And when you make those friendships, and Irene was talking about being alone, like, we're here for you. Like, those two girls did not meet each other until today. And they have probably known each other on the internet for 2 years plus. So the social aspect is available virtually. Obviously, we're here for you here. And I hope that anyone who feels alone knows that you really got an army of people behind you that want to come up and just like help you.
Yeah, there's a lot of things going on in the background. A lot of things. A lot of us are fighting and like educating and doing things. And we welcome you to join us, to be honest with you. Someone posted a question over here about central lymphatics treatment. And I just want to be clear. Betty's talked about Children's Hospital is going to do a presentation. Children's Hospital, University of Penn, and now Beth Israel, Dr. Singal's group. After I did my presentation, Dr. Singal came up and said, I'm all in with central lymphatics now. So they're having to learn, try to figure things out, because believe it or not, it has been the lymphatics, the most important to me, in my opinion, not just because I live with it, that have been kind of left off the table because they're very difficult to treat. And so it's coming. And I know it's hard when I say be patient, but the way things get quicker is we make them more important. So.
And it's changed so much, even the last couple of years, the visibility of the lymphatic system, like research for it, and even just the patient community has just exponentially grown in recent years. And even a few weeks ago, didn't the NIH have like a 2-day?
Their 2-day webinar,
yeah,
2/3 of that was central lymphatics.
It's amazing.
I'm like, that's me, that's me, that's me, and that's me. I mean, I was just like going through the list, because I'm like that. So it's like, it's really nice because when 2010, when I was diagnosed, there was nothing going on. So,
yeah. Well, Albert in the chat just said, this is his first time at the roundtable. He's in awe. He's new to lymphedema. I know so little about it. A heart doctor prescribed the lymph pump after I spent 10 days in the hospital with what was diagnosed as cellulitis. My legs were a weeping, painful mess, causing a nasty viral infection. I am learning so much. So glad that you're here, Albert. And it is constantly, it can feel overwhelming at first when you're newly diagnosed, but whenever I hear someone's newly diagnosed, I want to say congratulations, which always sounds kind of funny, but you're in the right place. You're surrounded with now a global community of people, and you're going to keep learning. We're all still learning every day too, from each other and from research and everything. So there's a lot out there. You're just getting started. Welcome to it. An anonymous attendee asked, there are no lymphedema support groups in my area. How does one start one? I would say Lymphatic Education and Research Network would be a good place to start, right? I know Kelly's really involved in that. That's always a good spot. And they have local chapters. Anybody else have insight on finding local groups other than online? There's always tons online, but
it's really a struggle. I mean, that is probably the biggest, because setting up a group's not as easy as getting a group. It could be, I mean, but trying to get a group of people and trying to find a place to meet is the struggle. And then, so working with therapists who are like overtaxed and overworked, asking them to come in, be part of it. Sometimes they can and sometimes they can't. I mean, they got their own families. And so it's, just be ready for it to not be as easy, but don't give up. That's my goal in North Carolina, to saturate this state where like you can't go 20 miles without running into a support group.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's online. Someone said, Robin in the chat said, whoops, I just lost it. She said that I feel like Canada still has a long way to go, but I love the internet and Instagram for the resources out there for me as a relatively new lymphy post-surgery. We're glad you're here, Robin. We're sorry our resident Canadian Amanda's not here tonight, but she's usually on here. Amanda Sobey on Instagram, you've probably seen her. But yeah, Canada, there are some groups, but again, you kind of have to search online. I know Betty's got a lot of resources. I have resources on my website, thelymphalife.com/links, that are broken out by area as well. Oh, okay. Cheryl Wolkoff says, sorry, I forgot and just joined about half an hour ago. It's all right, welcome. I'm frustrated by my lymphedema. I received a pump, but can't get any support from the company who sent it. No one has come to show me how to use it, and no one answers my call. I'm new to all of this, newly diagnosed. What is central lymphatics? I need some help. I had a therapist, but there is no improvement. Well, first of all, if your pump was a lymphopress, please email me directly at marketing@lymphopress.com, because that should not be happening if that's the case, and we'll fix that communication issue. Central lymphatics, we want to give like the Reader's Digest version.
It's basically where your legs and all your organs and everything drain to and then come up. That's basically your central lymphatics. And in a week or so, you'll get a replay and I give a full explanation. So it's basically that.
Yeah.
Like your deep internal plumbing. Deep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The source of all your lymph flow.
Yeah. Lymph, nutrients,
Mm-hmm.
hormones, all this. Your lymphatic system is very important to you being alive.
Mm-hmm. And we have a lot, if you're just joining at whatever point during this, on the LymphoPress USA YouTube channel, we have a lot of webinars on there with various thought leaders in the field, wealth of information to check that out. And Learn has a lot on their YouTube channel too, Lymphatic Education Research Network, lots of webinars that are super informative if you really want to get into the technical research of things. Oh, Robin. Okay, Robin just said in the chat, she's in Toronto, and she said that, Alexa, you were the first person I found in the lymphedema community online, and you opened my eyes to this session, plus a ton of resources. So I have you to thank for a lot of my learning. I'm so happy to hear that, Robin. All of us, I mean, we meet so many people in our lymphedema journeys, and the internet's a massive conduit for that. So we're so glad everybody's here. Angela, I know we've been talking a lot, and you've been real quiet in your little corner. What's going on in your world?
Oh, I'm about to travel on this weekend.
Nice.
I'm going back to Arizona. So I don't have a lot going on. I'm just kind of caught between two places now.
Oh, going back to the dry heat.
Going back to the sauna.
Yes. Well, speaking of travel though, I mean, I'm traveling this weekend as well on Sunday. Let's talk traveling with lymphedema. That's always a hot topic. We've got a little bit of time left. Catherine has a great tip for traveling with lymphedema and getting through security. If you would love to share your wisdom with that, your little trick.
So my wisdom about traveling with lymphedema actually came because I was traveling a lot a couple years ago, and I actually kept going through the same security area at the Philadelphia airport. And every time I would get stuck because my lymphedema would set off the security, either because of my compression pump or because of, some aspect of me being wrapped. So I actually sent Alexa, so she'll send it out with the email, a picture of my TSA Cares card. And basically what you do is, at least 3 days before you're going to fly, you call that number. You give them all of your flight information. You have to do this both ways, on the way there and then on the way back. And they will have somebody from TSA meet you down where you check in to get where you check your bags, or they will call you, and then they will find out where you are, and they will help you get through security in probably less than 15 minutes, probably closer to 10. And it's very helpful, especially if you are traveling with your compression pump, because that will have to go. I never check that bag. underneath the plane, because the airlines do not want to be responsible for such an expensive item if something were to happen to it. So I actually fit it into a carry-on level suitcase, but it does not count as my carry bag because it is a medical device, and medical devices fly for free. And they will get you all the way down to your gate, and then they will arrange for the same thing to happen on the way back. It has been extremely helpful. I just know that I have to prepare that they're gonna have to pat my leg down, and they can either do it right then and there, which is just like a little pat down, kind of going like this around your leg to make sure there's nothing there, or they could do it in a private room. Your choice. But I actually flew several years ago with a doctor of mine, and he was surprised at everything that I had to go through because of my lymphedema. So it kind of opened his eyes a little bit. So, but don't get frustrated, and don't become upset because they have to do that extra check, because it's just part of what their job is. And our bodies are what they are. And it's not like it's just lymphedema patients that this happens to. Also happens to me because I have a hip replacement. But it could happen to you because, as Kelly was saying, it could be that your body has a certain distinct smell to it. I'm not saying a bad smell, but a specific smell that the detector picked up. So then they have to check you to make sure that everything is okay.
Yeah. Trust me, you can thank all those pat downs for the underwear bomber and the guy that put bombs in his shoes. So
I know, right?
I mean, that's who you should be mad at, because that's the guy, not the TSA guy. Because trust me, from a retired Coast Guard officer having to pat down people and arrest them, that's not what we like to do.
Yeah.
Right. But as I said, it's not just lymphedema patients this is happening to, so don't feel like you're being singled out. It's for your own safety.
That's a good point to make, because the couple of times that I've been stopped and pat down because of my leg setting off the scanner too, it does feel kind of like embarrassing and violating. You feel like I can't help this. This is my leg. Like, what am I supposed to do? I'm not a threat, but it is good to know you have to advocate for yourself even at the airport. And we'll include that TSA Cares information in the replay email when it goes out in about a week. And as for regular, like just traveling on the plane, on the train, in the car, wearing your compression obviously is important, but also if you can in your seat, I like to do little like decongestive ankle flexes, in my seat if I can, just to kind of keep things moving and get up and, if I'm on a train, for example, walk to the restroom and back. Oh, Catherine, go ahead.
I have one other thing I totally forgot.
Oh, please. Yeah, go ahead.
But it's a good one, especially if you fly Southwest. If you fly Southwest, you can call when you purchase your ticket, okay? And they will allow you to purchase a second ticket. However, after your trip is completed, they will refund you the price of the second ticket. Now, if you get to the airport and the plane is not full, you can then go to the customer service desk that's by your gate and ask them if the plane is full. If it's not, could you have an additional, so you get the whole row of the plane, and they will do that. And they are very true to their word on that. I have never had a problem. They don't ask you for medical information. You just have to tell them that you have a disability. And yes, lymphedema does technically count as a physical disability. So it does work. You could be overweight, and they will allow this to happen. So this way, if your leg is on the larger end and you get stuck in the middle seat, you could have that seat directly next to you, so you have space.
That's awesome. That's a great
tip. And I didn't know about that until somebody, I don't remember who told me about it, but somebody told me about it, and I always do it. And yes, I had to fork out extra money in the beginning, but in the end, I'm more comfortable flying. And sometimes I wind up with that full row so I can put my leg right up across the row or right across the seat, from the window seat all the way across. And it's great.
That's awesome. You're like our resident frequent flyer guru over here. That's awesome. And we've got people thanking you for that info in the chat too. We are down, if you can believe it, to our last few minutes. Time flies when you're talking about living with lymphedema. So we're going to have our panelists go around. Just let's go and say your favorite thing about the fall, now that it's finally October, which is a good time of year for lymphies because it's cooler for some of us. While we go around and just say what your favorite thing is about this change in season right now. Let's close out with something like that. Kelly, we'll start with you.
Really?
Yeah. I always love putting you on the spot.
With everything I got to say, I got to tell you, I like that it's getting cooler. I hate the leaves though.
Are you raking them? Are you on yard duty?
Yeah.
Well,
But yeah, that's cool.
Well, thanks, Kelly.
You bet.
Betty, what do you love about the fall?
So the fall is my favorite season. One, I love any excuse to just like put on an extra 5 pounds. I'll be real honest. So like soups and breads and like stretchy clothes and warm layers. And it's just like, you just wake up 5 pounds heavier eventually because of all the goodness.
But you need it to be warm because it's cooler.
Yeah, I know. And it's like the acceptable time. It's totally
evolutionary. Angela, what are you excited about?
I'm excited that fall is not summer.
Okay, but be real, Angela. Is there even any fall in Arizona?
Not in Arizona has 1 season, 2 seasons, hot and hotter. But I'm in North Carolina right now, so the humidity is going, well, the humidity is still here, but the temperature is cooler, so it's a nice mix. And the colors are all changing and everything is just like transitioning. There's a shift. So I like that it's a time to just shift a little bit. And I like the new colors. You know, you get tired of just green all the time. So I like the new colors. Now, next week, it'll be a different story. I'll be where everything is brown, everything is hot. There's only 2 seasons. So
Enjoy it for the rest of the week.
Yeah.
yeah, thank you.
What about you, Catherine?
I also like fall because of the fact that the humidity is not as high. And for the way that the leaves do change. I actually we noticed the other day how much the leaves have changed, and we really haven't really kicked into full fall yet. So only some of our trees are kind of changing at this point, but it is really cool to kind of watch those trees change. But I don't like is when all the leaves fall off of the trees, because then I know it's getting cold and I don't like to be cold.
Well, Fenton sums it up. He says, low dew points rock. Yes, agree.
Yep.
Cheryl says, this was such an interesting session for me. Thank you for all you do. I am really a newbie. We're so glad you were here, Cheryl. Really glad everybody who is here tonight. Kelly, do you want to say?
Yeah, I'd like to make my final statement, not about fall.
The lawn.
What I did at the conference is like, I want to point out to this because I did this and I really thanked all the doctors that were there that were working in lymphatics. It's a very hard medical community to work in. It's not funded, lack of knowledge, lack of research, lack of information. They could go somewhere else and be fine. And so I want you guys to be aware of that when you're running into these doctors that are working in the fields, the therapists that are working in the fields, anybody that's working in the medical field in lymphatics, there's much easier places to go to make money. So be sure to thank them. And also with your doctor, I fought for years, like getting mad at my doctors because they didn't know. Change the dynamics of your thought process a little bit and say, well, how can I help? You know, make them part of the family and part of our family and say, how can I help? That's a big thing. And even the doctors that are like trying to work for us, they really are working their tails off for us. I mean, we have like a small group if you really think about it. So just something I want to bring to attention.
And they do listen if you really try to help educate them. They will listen. I had experience with that yesterday. So I do know that the doctors will listen, especially if they are fully engulfed and ingrained in the lymphatics.
Yeah, they listen better when you're not choking them. I found that out.
You get more flies with honey.
I guess they can hear better. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, we're just so pumped if you'll excuse the pun, that everybody was here tonight. We are here every second Tuesday of every month, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please register. Even if you can't make it live, you'll get the replay once it's processed and posted on YouTube. We just love being here talking with all of you guys. So we can't wait to see you again in a month and hear how everybody's doing and spread the word. And, you know, we just love you guys so much. And I don't even know what else to say. We're just so happy to be here. So, and thank you all panelists for being here and spending your time with us every month too. I really appreciate it. So thanks everybody. Have a great night. Bye.